And hello everybody joining us today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's start today's workshop off with a video about indexes. How many of you have actually seen a video on database indexes? All right, well, hello everybody, and welcome to our Cassandra certification workshop. I am David Jones-Gilardi, joined today by David Chung. Hello, David Chung, how you doing?
Hey, David. Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello. All righty, so let's go ahead. I see some very good morning as well. Yes, we know that we have folks from all over the world, so I stopped saying like good morning and good afternoon because you just never know anymore. But I'm glad to see somebody else has a good morning there as well. Okay, so with that, yes, hello. Thank you for joining us today. So we're just going to get right off and get right into it because we have a packed 2 hours for those of you joining us today. First thing we want to start off with is our friend Menti.com. So if you've not been in one of our workshops before, we use a tool called Menti, and Menti is going to be the platform that we're going to use to first ask you some questions, but then all of the questions, all of the quizzes and stuff, we're actually going to go through a whole set of about 20 practice exam questions today. And when we do that, we're going to use Menti to have you answer in it, right? So what I'd like everybody to do, if you would please, is go to Menti.com and use code 248594. I'm going to go ahead and pop that down here in the chats so you can all do this with us. 248594. There you go. And let me get that in the Discord as well. And for those of you who are joining us, hi, Skycam, how you doing? Or Skycam, sorry, I said Skycam, it's Skycam. Hello. Hi, Ravi, how you doing? Yeah, for those of you who are joining us in the YouTube chat, that is perfectly fine to go to the YouTube chat. But we also have a Discord channel as well. I will talk about that here in a moment. That is nice if, you want to be a part of the community. If you want to have conversations that persist past the workshop today, go to the Discord. I will drop the link here pretty soon. All right, I do see some folks are joining us in the Menti. How many do we have on right now? Let's see. Okay, all right, so let's see. Can I get 20 folks? Let's at least get 20 people in the Menti. There are many more of you today. Oh, I saw 19. Well, hi there, Jose. Hi from Rio. That's awesome. Oh, thank you, Cedric, for dropping the Discord link. Wonderful. Okay, we have our 20. So here's what we're going to do. First thing I want to start off with is just ask you some questions. We want to get to know you a little bit, kind of find out where you're coming from. So the first one here is, how much experience do you have with Apache Cassandra? Oh, we've got a couple veterans in here, it seems, but looks like the vast majority of you have less than 1 year and never used it, right? So for those of you who have never used Cassandra before, right? And this is for everybody, honestly. This is an interactive session. We intend for these to be interactive. So if you have questions, ask them, whether it's the YouTube chat, whether it's the Discord, either one, right? So if there's something that's not clear to you or whatever, by all means, ask him. So for those of you who have never used Cassandra before, welcome to Apache Cassandra. Some of the questions we're going to ask you today in preparation for the certification exam, you might not have any idea of what to expect. And that's okay, right? That's what we're here for. That's why we're going through this workshop, to help you prepare with the materials. Okay, thank you, everybody. Going to the next question. Have you been to any of our workshops before?
Well, it looks like we have a lot of frequent flyers on this.
Yeah,
one.
That's awesome.
Very cool. And welcome to the newcomers.
Yes, welcome to the newcomers, and thanks for coming back. For those who are, yes, hello world. Hi, Fico, how you doing? Alrighty, excellent. Thank you so much. And the next one. Now, how did you hear about this workshop? You can choose multiple on this one, by the way. All right. You know, Eventbrite is always good for us. I say this every time. It probably gets annoying for those who've joined us before, but I always enjoy the through friends. So thank you, for those who have recommended to someone else to come or to your friends. Please do. If you enjoy our content and our workshops, we put these out for free. We do that on purpose because our whole purpose here is about learning, right? It's about helping disseminate knowledge and help everybody, including ourselves, level ourselves up. So by all means, please, if you do like what we do, tell a friend, right? All right, excellent. Thank you. And last one, what motivates you to get certified? And don't worry, all these answers are anonymous, so you don't have to worry if your boss is watching that they'll know that you put better job opportunities or something like that. I'll let these come in. And Sean and YouTube said, if it's free, it's for me. Life slogan. That's funny.
Yep. It looks like Cassandra is cool, is trendy. That's awesome.
Yeah, right? Cassandra is cool. It honestly is. You can do some really amazing things with it. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Excellent. So with that, thank you everybody for answering those. Again, helping us kind of understand you a little better. Leave your Menti windows open, please, because we're going to come back to them for the questions. And before we move on, I just need to check one thing here real fast. Yeah, I don't know why you're not seeing the video, Dave, but I believe everybody else is seeing it.
No, I'm on. I'm good now.
Oh, you're good now. Okay, good. For a moment there, I was like, uh-oh. Okay, so like I said, leave the Mentis open. And what we're going to do, the basic setup of this, right, is I'm just going to go over just some real quick kind of intro slides. And we're just going to go over what you can expect in this whole path, what you can expect when you attempt to get your Cassandra certification. And then once we're done with that, we're going to jump into those practice exam questions. So the first thing I'd like you to do here is I'm going to pop you a link. We're going to go to the Github repository. And I've just dropped that link in both the Discord and the YouTube chats. So you'll find with a lot of our workshops, or actually all of our workshops, we tend to provide a GitHub repository that you can go to because we really intend these to be as self-service as possible. We do these live events as a way to be able to interact with you and give you a place where you can come and ask those live questions. But everything that we do and everything we're going to do today is doable by you self-service here online. So if you go to that GitHub repo, you should see something that looks like this. Now, the material that is covered here in the repo is really covered in what we're just about to talk about. So I'm not going to read through all this. I'll let you do that on your own. One thing I really do want to point out, though, in the repo, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, is the practice questions, right? So if I say go to practice questions, and I'll go ahead and drop this for you as well, you will find... And there you go, and there you go. You will find that all of the practice questions that we are going over today in the Menti are also here in the GitHub. There's actually going to be another option for that I'm going to show you a little bit later. The reason why I like to point this out is because sometimes for some folks, depending on where you are and what kind of bitrate you get, if for some reason the stream itself, like through YouTube or Twitch, if it's a little blurry, there's some of the slides that, for the questions you really need to be able to see clearly. If that happens for whatever reason, well, number one, make sure that you're set to at least 720p. But again, if that's happening, then you can just come here to the practice questions. We'll give you the number of the question that we are on. I'll tell you, hey, we're question 8, and we'll go on. You can just click on that question. It is the same question here that is going to be in the slides and everything that we're going to show. And the one thing I do ask you, though, you'll notice that because this is meant to be self-service, we do have a spot here where you have the correct answer. Ask that while we're going through the quiz part, that you don't just look at the answer. Try to answer for real. Try to answer with what you know. But just know that all of the questions are here. So if at any point you have any difficulty seeing what's going on or being able to see the screen, you can just come to this section. Okay, I did see some questions pop in. Let me take a look real quick. I see some folks are answering.
When we go over the correct answers and on the GitHub repository, we won't just say answer B is correct. We'll explain why it is.
Yeah. We're gonna... Oh, I'm getting an echo, David. There we go. Okay, that sounds better. Yeah, so we will explain each of the answers and the why, and that's actually part of what we're doing with this workshop as well. All right, so kind of just taking a look at the agenda. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over like the certifications themselves. What resources do you have at your disposal to help you get those certifications? Then we're just going to briefly go over the steps for getting your certification. Now, all the stuff I'm going to say here in this presentation, this is all also in the GitHub repository. You're going to find a whole section with all the steps, right? It's going to lay it out for you. Then we're going to jump right in. We're going to take the most time to go through all of the practice questions. And again, as David mentioned, then for each one of the questions, once everybody answers, we'll go ahead and go over the why of why the answer was the answer. Yes, this will be recorded. These videos are always recorded. So once we are done with the stream today, the video will automatically be posted up on YouTube, and it will be available at the same link you're looking at right now. Yes. Okay, wonderful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So the first thing is, well, what certification should you get, right? There are two different certifications that you can get, either the administrator certification or the developer certification. What it really boils down to is this. If you're somebody who is looking to manage an Apache Cassandra. Oh, hey, Dave, when you turn your mic on, I'm getting a terrible echo coming through. Okay. We'll have to fix that.
Yep.
Maybe turn off. Do you have a headset you can put on perchance? Let's see if we can fix that with an echo or with a headset. Okay. So there are two paths. There's the administrator or a developer. If you're looking to manage or operate a Cassandra database, you're looking to say build, deploy it, you're going to run the thing. The administrator certification is probably for you. If, however, you're not looking to actually operate Cassandra, but you are somebody who, say, is in code, you're looking to use the data, maybe you're an analyst, you're looking, again, to use Cassandra data, then chances are the developer certification is for you. Now, there's no reason why you can't get both, right? Why you can't try for both, but it's totally up to you and the time that you have and what your intent is. But again, the administrator is really for those folks who are looking to run, operate, and manage Cassandra. The developer certification, I would say, lumps everybody else. So what kind of, David, did you have something you wanted to say to that, by the way, before I move on?
Nope, just trying to get my headset going.
Okay. All right, so then what resources do you have, right? There's actually a ton. And the cool thing is that all of these are free. So the first one at the top there, you're going to see that datastacks.com/dev/certifications. This link is also in the GitHub repository. You'll find that if we go to the main repo here, in the very beginning, we drop those links like this. This page here is really your first place to go. It's your one-stop shop that's going to give you all the types of information that you need about, well, where do I go to get the Academy resources? Where do I go to test, right? So that's going to be the first place that you want to go to. Now, you see there in the bottom left, that's the GitHub repository that we dropped a little bit earlier. That is what we're working off of today. Really, the difference between the two is the GitHub repository includes the practice questions. It's kind of like a self-service thing. But it does link you back over to dev certification. So where dev certification is the main place for information on how to get your certification and what to expect there. The GitHub repository kind of brings you through some of the practice questions and gives you something to work on from that standpoint. And then finally, in that bottom right corner, you see academy.datastacks.com. So Academy, again, is a free resource. So, there's no paywall or anything. You just go register there. You will be presented. I'm going to show this to you here in a couple minutes. You have a whole set of courses that you can take. Now, it's not just limited to what we're focusing on here today with the Cassandra certification. There is more in there, and you actually see on the screen there's one for like the Kafka connector and such. There are other resources there. There are literally weeks worth of material that you could go through in Academy. Obviously for today, we're going to focus on the admin and developer paths, and I'm going to show you more about those. And you can also, all the resources you need to take the test itself, the actual exam, are also here in Academy. So at the end of the day, you will be using Academy to kick off the exam. Okay. My bad. All right, here we go. And then finally, 2 last places. I'll start on the right with the bit.ly there, the Cassandra workshop. That is the same as the Discord link that was dropped earlier. So again, for those of you who are in the YouTube chat, that's totally fine. But once we stop the stream, that conversation ends, right? So if you want to be able to say contact us later on, if you have longer form questions or whatever, Discord is really the place to go. On the left-hand side, you see community.datastacks.com. So that's like the Stack Overflow for Cassandra, right? It's not just us that are there. There are many of the experts in the Cassandra community. There are folks all around the world that are there. So that's a really great place. Let's say that you have questions maybe outside of what we're going to talk about today. You're working on your own Cassandra clusters, or you're working on a data modeling issue or something like that. That's a really great place to go and ask those questions, where not only the community can see those questions and see the answers that you get, but then you have, access to all of these other experts that are around that can help answer those questions as well. Oh, and by the way, all the links, nobody expects you to just memorize these links, right? The slide deck itself, if you take a look in the repo, you'll see this slide deck for the workshop. All the links are embedded in that slide deck as well. So if you are interested in going to any of these places, you can get them. All righty. All right, so Dave, I think I heard you put your headset on. You want to do a quick sound check?
Yeah, how's this sounding?
Sounds wonderful. I didn't hear an echo. Can everybody hear David? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear Dave. The other Dave. And there's like multiple Daves.
This David.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Sean. Wonderful. All right. So with that, let's get into the steps for certification. So the first thing I mentioned was that datastacks.com/dev/certifications. Now there's something else on that page that's in particular important, right? It's the exam rules and process section that's down at the bottom of the page. The exams are proctored. Somebody will actually be watching you during the exam. Not only that, there are you have to set up your environment, right, to be a certain way. You can only have a single monitor. You can't have another laptop open and so on and so forth, right? So there are rules that are provided to you, and you need to ensure that you follow those and have those in place. And what's going to happen is when you go to take your test, the real test, when the proctor comes on, not only will they validate some things that you need, but then you're going to actually have to go through a check, right? I'm going to show you all of this, by the way. You're going to go through a check in your browser, and that check is actually going to check your system to ensure it meets these needs. The reason why this is important is because even though you won't be able to start the test until you've passed all those checks, the last thing I want all of you to do is, schedule, like you've coordinated out time, you're going to go take your test, and you haven't done this stuff yet, and now you got to spend an hour getting everything ready, and kind of throws off your flow there. So you just want to ensure that you have read the rules in the process section first, that you know what to expect, and that you have your system set up and ready to go. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, there are 2 different paths you can take. There's a developer certification and an administrator certification. And you'll find in Academy, there are also 2 learning paths, right? There's either the admin path or the developer path. Now, again, you can do it all. That's totally up to you. But for each one of these, if you're looking to do the admin test, do the admin learning path. If you're looking to do the developer test, do the developer learning path. Each one of these in their entirety will give you all of the resources and information that you need to pass the exam, right? So if you did nothing else but go through these learning paths, you will be provided with all the information you need to pass either one of those exams. And again, I'm going to show you a demo of all this here in a moment. Okay, and if you haven't done it already, or at that point, go to DataStax Academy, sign up, right? Again, it's free, so you don't have to worry about any credit cards or anything like that. And then from there, you can take your learning paths. Now, here's where this gets really cool. So based on, once you take one of these learning paths, then you can kind of set yourself up for an exam voucher. Now, actually, we have 2 ways you can get yourself in a voucher. One is right now. So Jack, can you go ahead and drop the vouchers, please? And so what he's going to do is drop a form. He's going to drop a link to a form. If you fill that out, that's one way to get a voucher. Another way to get a voucher is to complete either one of those learning paths. If you complete the admin learning path or the developer learning path, and then you send an email to academy@datastacks.com with your name, right, the email you used to register with, and which learning path you completed, you will get a voucher. That voucher will give you 2 tries. It'll give you two, however you want to use them, 2 tries to take exams. How does that work? Well, either, let's say you go ahead and you take the developer exam and you pass it. Wonderful, that was 1. Now you can actually go take the admin exam for free, right? Or let's say you start, you go to take the developer exam. Unfortunately, you don't pass. Well, now you get a second try, again for free. So the voucher gives you 2 attempts for free for the exams. Which is, as far as I'm concerned, it's actually really awesome. The tests themselves, without that voucher, cost $145. So we're just giving that to you, that as a thanks for coming here and wanting to be a part of the community and try to get your certification. So I see, thank you, Jack. He dropped those links. So either use that form or, again, complete one of the learning paths in Academy and send an email to academy@datastacks.com.
And David, I'm going to jump in for
please.
Just a second here. Yeah, a couple things. One, there was a question about when the certification expires and when the vouchers expire. The vouchers are good for 3 months after you get them, but the certification doesn't expire. It is, however, tied to open source Apache Cassandra version 3. And we anticipate new certifications after Cassandra 4 is released. The other thing is we've been doing these workshops now for a couple months, right, David? I think 2 months, maybe 3. And we've now had enough people go through them and take the exam that we're able to look at some numbers, and we are finding that success in the exam is directly related to attending the workshop and to completing the learning paths in Academy. So if you want the best shot at getting certified, I'd encourage you after this workshop to walk through the learning path. They're very good, and we do see a bump in scores when people do both.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and something just to be absolutely clear, the vouchers will go for 3 months, as David said. Previously in the year, the vouchers they were expiring at the end of this year, at the December 31st, but they will actually go from 3 months, right, after the point that you receive your voucher. So I did want to clarify that. And honestly, 3 months, once you get your voucher, if you're wondering, oh man, is that going to be enough time? It's enough time. If you put forth the effort to go through the material in Academy, I would say, you could probably, you could power through it if you really wanted to be crazy about it in a couple days. But if you really want to get into it, if you really want to learn and get detailed, it could take, I'd say, about a week or so. It depends on how much time you have. There is a combination of videos, there's practice quizzes, there's also the exercises themselves that will bring you a lot deeper into Cassandra. You don't technically have to do the exercises to get enough information to pass the exam, but if you really, really want to kind of solidify that knowledge, the exercises are the way to go. Okay, good. Okay, I just got confirmation, by the way, that the vouchers issued now are good up until the end of February. So yes, we don't have that December 31st wall anymore. Okay. All right, so with that, then finally, get your voucher, learn the materials, right? Make sure that you've gone through all the quizzes. I'm going to show you some of this in a moment. Make sure you go through all the quizzes inside the actual courses in Academy, because there's going to be quizzes that go along with each one of the sections. Once you are comfortable, if you can comfortably pass those quizzes and you feel comfortable with the practice exam questions we're going to give you today, then it's time to go take your exam, right? Go take your exam, rock, and then come back to us when you get your certification. All right. With that, let me go ahead and just show you a quick little demo. Before I do that, let me take a look at the chats. How are we doing? Thank you, Sean. I see Sean is all over answering these questions. I think we're good on questions then. Okay, wonderful. All right, so here, what I've done here, notice I'm at academy.datastacks.com. I've logged in with my own account, and once you log in, you will see something just like this, right? So you notice down here in the catalog, I have these learning paths, either the admin or developer path. There's also things in the Kafka connector, the certification one itself. You'll see there's a whole set of other courses that are related to some of the advanced workloads in DataStax Enterprise, and some other things that are being added there. But the ones we're going to focus on today are these learning paths and the certification. So let's pretend for a moment that I am interested in the developer path. All I need to do is click on the path. You'll find that I am then given links to these 3 courses. So once you say enroll, then you'll be presented with the material, and you'll be able to control from here. So if I say start, then you'll see I get all the material. I'm going to sneeze. Give me a second. Excuse me. I hope that wasn't too loud. But once you click on that, you'll be presented with all the material, right? So like I mentioned, each of the videos and everything, all these, there's a ton of video content here. And then you'll find that as you start going through, you'll see these quizzes, right? This quick wins quiz, partitions, you'll go through an exercise and a partitions quiz. I really, really implore everybody, go through all of this material, right? If you go through all of the material here, you are setting yourself up for success for the exam, because the questions and the material are going to be based off the information that you find here. Now, as I mentioned, if you take a look on the right-hand side on any of these, you'll see this resources section, and you'll see these exercises, right? You don't have to do these, but again, they will give you a much, much deeper understanding. Because, if you think about it, when you go through just the video courses and the quizzes, you're doing things at the theory level. But when you do the exercises, you're getting your hands dirty. You're really kind of solidifying that knowledge. But again, you don't have to do that from that standpoint. And then that's it.
And David?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I need to jump in too here with one other resource, and that is Astra.
Yes.
Astra is our cloud-based Cassandra, and you can get a free, you can sign up for Astra free for a single node, a single node Cassandra in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about any of the setup or that. And it's the quickest way to get in and play with Cassandra and try things out. When we built the exam, I tested all of the questions. Astra was the easiest way to do it, and I've got Cassandra installed everywhere. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that.
Yeah, and if actually, can I get one of the crew to drop the Astra link down for folks? Now, something to point out about Astra, and why David brought that up, right, is what we have found historically is that for some folks, the exercises are done within a VM, right? I want to say the VM is like 3.8 gigs or, something around 3 gigs. We do recognize that not everybody have either one machine's powerful enough to run it, or, maybe they have limited bandwidth. 3 gigs is asking a lot. So Astra allows you to do all this stuff online in the cloud. Matter of fact, there are a whole set of Katacoda scenarios as well. I'll go ahead and just point them out in the GitHub repo. If you scroll down to these resources, you're going to find there are some links here. All of DS201 is actually covered in the Katacoda scenarios. The one big difference is the quiz questions are not there, right? So Katacoda is actually wonderful, and you'll actually find this, that /dev certifications site I talked about in the very beginning. That also will give you links to those. You will find that the Katacoda scenarios are actually wonderful, especially if you have a lower resource laptop and maybe running Cassandra completely locally is a little bit much. They're great, right? But if you do that, I really implore you to come back to Academy and make sure you take these quizzes, right? Be comfortable with the quizzes here. And it's it'll be the same material. Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, thank you, Cedric, for dropping the Astra link. And again, you can use the free tier. The free tier is free forever, right? So that way you can get up there and you can experiment with Astra and use the free tier. You don't have to worry about any credit cards or anything from that standpoint. Okay, so whether you do the exercises, whether you use a VM or use Astra, use Katacoda, we try to cover all the options here. Really, once you go through and you hit start, you go through the material in each case. What'll then happen is if I go back to my dashboard, then let's say I was in my developer path, you'll start to see these complete, right? You'll complete all of these. Once you've done that and you feel comfortable with the material and you're ready to take your exam, then you go to the DataStax certification catalog or the course here. Now you'll notice when I click on this, there's a couple links that are provided. Number one is the exam rules. These are the same rules that are provided for you in /dev/certifications. Either way, I think it's extremely important that you read these and you understand what is expected of you. Things like my favorite one on here, have a small mirror. Why? So the proctor can actually inspect your area. Like I said, a live person's going to be with you. Something else about these tests, you can take them 24/7 at any time, completely self-service. You do not need to schedule a time. So what will happen is you decide that you're going to go take it now, you can just go and take the test and go, right? But again, understand that you're going to need to have all this stuff in place. You're going to have 90 minutes for the exam itself. One difference in what we're going to do today is we're actually going to gate the questions. We gate them like 2.5 minutes, only because we need to ensure in 2 hours that we have time to get through everything. In the real exam, you're not going to have any limit per individual question. You will have a total of 90 minutes for the whole thing. I think most people finish it in about 60. So, you should, there's definitely some wiggle room there. But I just want to point out that there is that difference. So again, just be aware of these. Make sure that you're prepared before you go in. Also, you'll see this other link, this check your computer for compatibility. Now, I suggest you do this ahead of time. That way you're good to go. What it's going to do is it's actually going to ask you first to install an extension into your browser. Once you've installed that extension, it's going to perform some checks. Like I use multiple screens, right? So it says, hey, you have a secondary screen. You have to remove that before we're going to let you go on. You have to do this in order to take the test, right? So you're going to want to install this extension, go through all the things that it tells you to get your system set up. Once you've passed, then you're going to be good to go.
And David, on that multiple screens,
yeah,
a closed laptop with an external monitor counts as just one screen. I know a lot of people have that set up and have asked questions.
Okay. Yes, thank you for clarification. Okay, so then you're good. You've read the exam rules. You've set up. You got your small little mirror. You've gone through the Chrome extension, and you're ready to go. So then what do you do? Well, I've already signed up, but you would sign up if you haven't done it. This is going to bring you into the Metal testing system. I'll just go ahead and log in. Metal's slow today. I was just in this like a half hour ago and not having any issue. Of course, wait for the actual live workshop for it to like spin on us. Come on, Metal. Let me try that again. That's a first. Huh. Yeah, that's a first. I've never seen that happen.
Go. Yeah.
All right. Oh, it looks like Metal is experiencing some slowdown today or something. So why don't we give Metal a moment? Really, all I was going to show you here is once you go into the interface, you'll be presented with multiple options for the test that you want to take. And what you actually see in the interface is you'll see where you have the exam itself, and then it'll have the price. But again, you get a voucher. When you click on that price, you'll be given an option, a dialog to enter in your voucher code. That'll take care of essentially giving you your 2 tries, right? Your 2 free tries. Oh, here we go. Yeah, that was... Oh, wait, it's still not... Yeah, it's just really lagging. All right, let's find out what happens. Honestly, after all the times we've done this, I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting question. How about paper and pencil work out like a diagram to understand the query correctly?
I don't believe that is allowed, David.
Okay.
Because the proctor can't see what you're writing, or you could be reading crib notes or something on it.
Yeah. Oh, you can use an external... Yeah, you can use an external monitor. You can just only have a single monitor. Dave, is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Closed laptop with an external monitor is certainly allowed.
Okay, so it does look like Metal, for some reason, is having a slowdown today. So what it comes down to is this. You'll be provided with your options. If you click on the $145, the cost of the exam, like I said, the payment, you just put in your voucher code. That'll take care of the payment. You'll also have another little widget there that will go green once you have passed those checks. Here it goes. This little widget here, once you have passed those checks, it'll go green. But if you haven't, you'll need it. It'll make you do it. Like you won't get the button for the test to light up until you've passed the checks and until you put in payment. So again, you click on that, put in your voucher, payment will be waived, and then you go through the checks. Once that goes green, you'll get the button and you're good to go. Alrighty, and then that's it. At that point, you take your exam. You'll have the 90 minutes. And then after that point, if you pass, either way, you'll get a response. You'll get an email. The system will let you know what your grade was and everything. And then the email that you get, the follow-up, will give you the rest of the details that you need there. Alrighty, and with that, let's go ahead and get into our questions. Now, I'm just going to check the questions here. I do see that some questions have come in. Yes. Yep. I believe, David, if you see the question about can we log in back session saved?
Yeah, I was just going to answer that. Okay. If the question's interrupted, network connectivity, something like that, Metal, who is the one who administers the test, they do have a procedure for getting back in after an interruption.
Right. Yeah, and that's right. SciCam, I see that someone answered. There's no expiration on the certificate itself. So if you pass and you get your Cassandra certification, that's not going to expire. Now, note that the certification is for Cassandra 3, right? So Cassandra 4 is coming very soon. There will be certifications for that. So we, of course, encourage you to get that certification once that happens as well. But the certification itself won't expire. Let's see. Astrofree.
I think we're caught up on.
Go ahead, David.
I think we're caught up on questions, David.
Yeah, I do see one from Jose Mata in Discord. Astrofree account doesn't allow graphs. If you're referring to graph with Tinkerpop, not just yet, right? That's not something that's there. That's right. Thank you, Sean. All right. So with that, I think we are caught up. Let's do it. Question time.
All right.
So before I go into that first one, I almost gave it away. So here's what we're going to do. I need you to go back to Menti. Okay, so I'm gonna pop over here and we will go back to Menti. I will pop over here. Yeah, give me thumbs up. Let me know. Matter of fact, I will pop over to the next piece and we should see a bunch of names starting. There we go. Yay, yeah. I want to see all those cool avatars pop in. I'll wait to get a couple more here. And we'll start off our nice, soothing practice question music. All right, wonderful. Okay, I think we have enough folks in here. So here's how this is going to work. I am going to go ahead and show you a slide. Then I'm going to kick off the Menti question, right? If you look at where you're taking the Menti, there's a timer there only because like I said, we have to gate these at 2.5 minutes apiece. So we have enough time to get through everything. Again, in the real exam, you will not have any time per question. You'll have 90 minutes in total. But then what'll happen is I'll show the question. You all get a chance to answer. Once everybody has answered or once the time is up, I will show what everybody answered. Then we're going to actually talk about the solution, right? So we're going to talk about that for each one of these. All right, so with that, let me go ahead and do this part. There we go. And here is the first one. So you want to consider the CQL statements here. And then how many rows will the roller coasters table have after executing all of the CQL statements? And again, if you have any trouble reading this for some reason, feel free to go to the GitHub repository to the practice questions. We are in question number 1. Just my... Oh, thank you, Sean. There we go. We're magically smaller. My head should no longer be in the way of the answers, or the CQL. Okay. And it looks like we have our results in. Let's take a look. All right, so the correct answer was C, but we definitely had a spread, right? So it looks like the majority of you got that correct. That's wonderful. We know that we have some folks that are completely new to Cassandra. So again, like I promised, we will explain all of these. Why don't you take it, Dave?
Yeah, so when we look at a question like this, we're always going to, in Cassandra, look at the primary key. And in this case, the primary key is a single column. It's the name column. And that's really going to give us the answer to this question. So we look at the 4 inserts. And the first one, the primary key is the name, Millennium Force. The second one, the primary key is Formula Rossa. The third one, the primary key is Steel Dragon 2000. So those are 3 rows, 3 inserts. The fourth one is where this becomes an issue. If you look, the name, Millennium Force, is the same as in the first insert, same primary key. And core to our understanding of Cassandra, if you do an insert in Cassandra with the same primary key, it's not an error. In an RDBMS, it would be an error, duplicate key. In Cassandra, it's an upsert. So what happens is that the first 3 inserts create new rows, and the last insert updates the first row. So the correct answer is C, 3 rows are created.
And something also to point out about the questions, the practice questions we're giving you today. These are not the same exact questions that are in the exam, for one. But they are formulated just like to be identical to what you're going to find. And we're giving you a sampling, right? So we're giving you the sampling of what types of things to expect. So then you go into it kind of having that in mind and knowing what to expect. If there are questions, especially for those of you who are brand new to Cassandra, if there are questions here, you're just like, how do I don't even know what the answer could be. It's okay. That's exactly what those Academy courses are for, right? They will bring you through the information that you need to learn how to figure these out. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and go to our next question. You should see in your Menti that will pop. All right, so question number 2. Consider these CQL statements. And what is the result of executing? Why do I keep saying that way today? I don't know. Executing all the CQL statements. My brain wants to say executing.
Executing, that's awesome.
All right, your Menti should switch, and you should see the question or the answers popping up here in a moment. Oh. If you don't have the Menti code is... Let me pop that real quick. Here you go. There you go. Oh, please don't answer in the chats. Make sure that you just answer in Menti. Do not answer in the chats, please. All right, looks like the answers are in. Let's take a look. All right, the correct answer was in fact D. Looks like the majority of you got that. Wonderful. And let's take a look at why.
So once again, we're going to look at the primary key here. And the primary key, you'll notice that the artist and title columns are in the inner set of parentheses. That makes those two columns the partition key. So we'll look at the inserts again. The first insert, the song Beatles and Yesterday, are the artist and title. They make up the partition key. So that's one partition. The next insert, the Beatles and Let It Be, that's a different partition because the partition key is made up of the two columns, artist and title. The third one, ABBA and Fernando, that's yet a third partition. And the last one, Frank Sinatra and Yesterday, artist and title, again, a unique combination, makes a fourth partition. And I'll bet you didn't know that Frank Sinatra and practically every other artist in the world has covered Yesterday by the Beatles.
I'm not sure I want to hear that version, honestly.
Yeah. So I'm
not a big Frank Sinatra fan.
D.
I'm sure I just like lost some friends right there. They're like, what? But yeah. Alrighty. Wonderful. All right. So let's see. Just checking questions. Yes. I need to think repeatedly. It is not a relational database. That's right. Yeah. That will trip you up in Cassandra if you look at it as a relational database. All right, let's go to question 3. We're moving to question 3 now. Okay, so consider the CQL statement here. Which of the following is a valid query for the cars table? And your quiz in Menti should be counting down here. There you go. Yeah, Sean, it's spa day for the workshop certification workshop. Or the Cassandra certification workshop. Okay, looks like the results are in. Let's see how everybody did. The correct answer in this case was C. So it looks like the majority of you got that one correct. Wonderful.
Okay, excellent.
Let's look at why.
Yeah, once again, we're going to look at the primary key. In this case, we have 4 columns that make up the primary key. The first 2, make and model, are the partition key. And the next 2, year and color, are clustering columns. They define how rows are ordered within a partition. Ordered first by year and then by color. So right away, I can look at those first 2 queries and say that those cannot be correct. The reason is our preferred pattern is going to be query per partition, and our query has to specify the partition. The partition key is make and model. Those first two queries do not specify make and model. So we rule out A and B. We look at queries C and D. They only differ in the clustering column that they call out. The first one calls out year. The second one calls out color. And the rule is with clustering columns, if you constrain a clustering column, you have to constrain the first one. So if you select based on the value of a clustering column, and in order they are year then color, you have to select based on year or year and color. You can't just select color, that is constraining the second column and not the first. The reason is this defines the way these rows are physically stored and are going to want to select contiguous rows in storage. If we selected by color, we'd be bouncing around across rows. So that's part of the reason why you get such high performance at scale with Cassandra, is we're going to limit our queries most often to a single partition and then to contiguous rows within that partition. So the correct answer here is C.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just checking something real quick. Can I get a sound check? Can everybody hear us? Because I had sound drop out on my end, and I want to make sure we're okay. Can I get some thumbs up if you can hear us? Yes, wonderful. Okay, good. All right.
Yep, good.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I just had a wall of nothing, and I got concerned there. Okay, great. All right, so with that, the next thing I want to show you is the leaderboard. So I want to be clear about something with the leaderboard here. It's just the way that Menti does things. And the leaderboard, we're not doing this isn't meant to be a competition, right? Really what I want you to pay attention to is not so much what's up on the screen, but look at your phones or wherever you're taking the Menti, right? It's going to tell you how many points you have. Here's what we're doing. Each question here is worth 1,000 points. By the end of the 20 questions, if you got them all right, you'll have 20,000 points. To pass the actual real exam, you need a passing grade of 70%. So in this case, we're just trying to give you a gut check. In this case, you need to pass, you need to get 14 or 14,000 points in order to have 70% for what we're doing in the practice today, right? So the purpose of the leaderboard is just to kind of give you an idea of how you're doing. It's not meant to be a competition. So if you're looking at this and you're like, wait a minute, I've got 3,000, why is my name up here or something? It's because we have so many of you in here, and this is meant, usually the way Menti does things, it's meant to be kind of a competition with time and stuff in place, but we don't have that here. So again, look at your phones, see how many points you have. It's just giving you a gut check of kind of where you're at. All right, so with that, let's go over to the next question, question number 4. And we should see our question pop. So again, consider the CQL statement. And then what is a valid statement about this atomic batch?
And David, I always have to laugh when I see our leaderboards because in every one of these, Taylor Swift has been one of the leaders.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I don't know if it's the way Menti picks some of the names, but I'm actually Taylor Swift right now. and I'm usually Taylor Swift because I also play along with everybody because I need to see where things are. So it's kind of funny. Gaston, are you asking for this one? Here, this is the link I go to. It's actually a YouTube thing. This is called in3. If I use the genre ambient and mood here. Yeah, this is free music that we can put on here without having to worry about copyright. There you go. Okay, so the answers are in. Let's take a look. The correct answer here was C. Looks like the vast majority of you got that right as well. Very good. All right, let's see why.
Excellent. This question actually is a pretty good one because it shows some things that are very Cassandra-like. What we see here are denormalized tables. Two tables, they in this case have exactly the same data in them, the same columns and so on, but they're configured to support different queries, which is a huge difference between Cassandra and relational world. In a relational database, we'd have just one table with this. But given that we have two tables that are designed to support different queries and have the same data in them, it would be a very common use case for a batch, for an atomic batch, that we would use it to update both of the tables. So let's look at this. First table, primary key is ID. The second one, the primary key is department and ID, where department is the partition key. So supporting two different kinds of searches, search query by ID and query employees by department. We look at the two inserts in the batch. The first one inserts into employees ID, name, and department. The employee table, the only requirement for this one would be that we insert the ID. We could have no values for name and department, so that insert works. The second insert on its own, we have to provide the primary key, that's department and ID, and that would be AC1123 and legal. So that insert works as well. There's nothing that prevents the individual inserts from working, nor is there anything that prevents the batch from working. If one of those individual inserts failed, the batch would not be able to be applied. The batch would fail. But it's a multi-partition batch because they're in different tables, so different partitions altogether. And there's nothing that prevents either of these inserts from happening, nor is there anything that prevents them from happening together. So the correct answer is that it is a multi-partition batch that can be applied, and that's C. But it's very much a Cassandra. The first time I saw this kind of, this sort of CQL, that really nailed it down for me that this is not a relational database. It's completely different.
All right, wonderful. Okay, let's move on to our next question. And I will pop your Menti. So we're on question 5. If you're following along in the GitHub repository, question 5. Consider the table definition with a primary key omitted. What primary key does this table have? Don't forget to read the "it is known that" section. All right, looks like the answers are in, and let's take a look. The correct answer here was, in fact, B. So it looks like most of you got this one right as well. Very well.
Yeah, very good. So if you look at this one, in this case, we're trying to decide what the primary key is. We have to look at those three statements. Restaurant reviews are uniquely identified by a combination of name, city, and reviewer. The primary key uniquely identifies a row, so all of those need to be in the primary key. The second one, the restaurant reviews are retrieved by using a combination of name and city. So that means that name and city need to be part, name or city need to be part of the partition key, name and or city, and that narrows it down right away. D can't be a possibility because if D were the primary key, the partition key in D is reviewer, and we can't retrieve by name and city. So C can't be a choice because, again, we couldn't query by name and city if C were the primary key because name and city don't make up the full partition key. It could be, it could still be A or B. We also look at the fact that the table has multi-row partitions, and let's see. Yeah, and reviewer is part of the primary key. Reviewer needs to be a clustering a column. So if reviewer is sorry, I'm getting all wrapped up here. Let me slow down a bit. If reviewer is a clustering column, that leaves B as the choice because we can do a query by name and city, and that nails down the partition. We can't do A because city is the second clustering column, and like the previous one, you have to constrain the first clustering column before you can constrain the second. I was reading chat and reading the solution and looking at the slides all at once, got myself a little twisted up there. But B is the correct answer, and most of you got B.
Alrighty. Yeah, it's funny you say that, David, because that's exactly why I turn my phone around and I keep my eye away from the chat, because I've totally done that before. My eye catches something and then all of a sudden it's processing, All right, so moving on to question 6. Going to question 6 here. And you should see it popping. So if we consider the table definition and the CQL query here, which materialized view definition can be used to support this query? All right, let's see. The answers are in. So the correct answer here was D. Now, this is one of those, if you miss this one, you'll never miss it again. This is one of those that once you understand why the answer is D, you'll be like, oh. And that's, by the way, exactly why we're doing this, right? Because it's one of those, even though the questions may not be the same exact questions that are on the exam, you know, you may find something very similar, so it's good to know this.
Right, so we take a look at this one. The teams table, the primary key is name, and the query there can't be done in that table because the query has to include the partition key, which in this case is also the primary key, and that query doesn't. So one way to solve this is a materialized view. So we're going to want to create a materialized view to support a query by wins. What that tells me is that wins needs to be the partition key in the materialized view. You can think of it as another table. So that rules out A and C because the partition key that's being created is name. So it's down to B and D. And as we look at that, as David said, you kind of just have to know this, but none of the fields from a primary key can be null. Therefore, to create the materialized view, we do have to do the null check because the wins column could be null in the original table, but we have to do the null check for all the fields of the primary key, both wins and name, so D is the correct answer.
All right. Let's go ahead and take a look again with the leaderboard. Remember, it's more about looking at your phones and seeing where your points are. We've had a total of 6 questions, so if you've got them all correct, you'll have 6,000 points. Okay. Alrighty. Moving on to the next question. Question 7 for those following along in the GitHub repository. So in this case, you want to consider the table definition and the CQL query. Which secondary index can be used to support the query? All right, looks like the answers are in. Let's take a look. Now this one, this is the correct answer is A, right? But if you look at the spread between how many folks went for B, this is, again, another one of those that once you understand the why, you'll never get this wrong ever again. Right, so let's take a look.
All right, there's a couple of things going on here. So again, we'll look at the table. The primary key is city and name, where name is the clustering column. The query we want to do is by city, so that, and city is the partition key, so that part's good. but we can't query by cuisine because it's not a clustering column. In fact, it's not the first clustering column. So adding a secondary index would support this query. There are two things happening here. One, that the secondary index is going to be on the column that we want to query that's not the partition key. So that would be on cuisine. And you may look and say, well, what about B? Why isn't B correct on where we would set that to city and cuisine? The reason is pretty simple. As David said, you only get to do a secondary index on one column. And city is already the partition key. So our query is still going to have to use city, and it gets to use it because that's the partition key. And secondary index then is going to be on the second column, which would be cuisine. So A is the only possible correct answer here.
Okay, all right. Checking our questions. All right, moving on to question 8. Which statement describes the where clause in a query? Cedric. All right, looks like our answers are in. Let's take a look. That one, the correct answer was A. Yeah, this is another one of those that once you know the answer and why, again, you'll never get it wrong. By the way, that's exactly why we're doing this, right? And going through it in this kind of format, if you will, because especially for those of you who are brand new, right, to Cassandra, you just might not know some of the rules, right? And that's what those Academy courses are gonna help you with. But once you learn this piece and then read what Cedric said in the YouTube chat, which is I'm gonna just repeat it because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And please always provide a where clause for Cassandra's sake. You know, I could tell from some of the questions that we probably have some folks coming from the relational world. You know, Cassandra is a big database, right? I mean, you have a database that can support petabytes of data at speed, at scale. Yep. And imagine doing a select star with no where clause, right, on what that would actually mean. So anyway, so I'll let David talk to this. But again, once you get this, you'll never get it wrong.
And Cassandra is a distributed database, so those petabytes of data could be spread over thousands and thousands of nodes.
That's right, yeah.
So in Cassandra, we're always going to want to use a where clause and nail down either a single partition, that would be ideal, or to use the mathematical phrase, a countably small number of partitions using an in clause. So the requirement here is that the where clauses must reference all the fields of the partition key in order to specify a single partition, or we said perhaps a countably small number of partitions. Could you have the entire primary key or clustering key columns? Sure, but the only requirement is all the partition key columns. So A is the correct answer.
That's right. All right, so moving on to question 9. Here we go. All right, so consider the CQL statements here. Which insert statement can be used to insert a row in the people table? Okay, looks like our answers are in. This is another one of those that it seems harder than it is, but once you understand the way that you need to store a UDT or something like that, then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this one's a syntax question.
Yeah.
It comes down to user-defined types. Name is a user-defined type. They're created as part of a key space, just like tables, so in the same scope. And we're going to do an insert here where we have the user-defined type for the field name. The key here is understanding what the syntax is for representing that, and the syntax is JSON. So the correct answer is A. As we said, this one is really just a syntax question.
Alrighty, moving on to the leaderboard again. This is just more for you to take a look at your phones, kind of see where you are, gut check. And at this point you should have, if you got them all correct, right? Total of 9,000 points. All right, moving on to the next question. Question 10 for those following along in the GitHub repo. Consider the CQL statements here, and what is the result of executing these CQL statements? All right, answers are in. Sorry, I'm laughing at Cedric, who on YouTube is very funny today. All right, let's see what did we come up with. Yes, the correct answer is B. And notice the spread here, right? This is actually this is one of my favorite questions. When I first came across it and seeing similar things in the actual exam, I was like, oh, that's a cool question, because once this is one of those types of questions that kind of points out a specific detail and is very key to understanding how Cassandra works. And then once you get it, then you're like, oh, okay, it makes sense. But I can see where folks got thrown on this.
Okay, so once again, we'll take a look at this one. Primary key, username and email, and partition key is username. So very important that we look at the table definition carefully here. So we do the first insert, we get DC1234, David at datastacks.com, work, and Dave. The second one, username and email, the primary key. The username, DC1234, we're in the same partition, but the email is different, so we do get a different row. So 2 rows, Dave at gmail.com, Dave at datastacks.com, work Dave, personal Dave. Okay, the last one, we do an update, and this is the first update we've seen, update statement we've seen in these questions. We're setting the nickname to Davey and the description to school, and we're setting it using a where clause, of course, where the username is DC1234 and the email is david@gmail.com. So I have those 2 partitions, and for email DC123, or excuse me, username DC1234 and email david@gmail.com, the description should be school, and the nickname is Davey. Now, the part of this that you had to read very carefully is that nickname is a static column, and a static column means that there is a single value for per partition. Well, the partition key is username, so for every row in the DC1234 partition, the nickname is set to Davey. And if you were to look to use SS table dump and look at how this was stored in a table, you'd see that the static column has only one entry for the entire partition. So the correct answer is B.
Awesome. And I see that we had a question that came in on YouTube and you were answering it, and looks like we got a thumbs up there. So wonderful. All right. Moving on to the next question. So this one's going to be a little bit different from what you've seen so far. Question 11, again, for those following along. Consider the 2 data centers that you see here in the diagram. And what is a valid statement about a read request made at consistency level of local quorum to coordinator node Z in the Paris DC?
Amalan will answer your question when we give the result.
All right, looks like the answers are in. Let's see how everybody did. The correct answer was in fact B. Let's take a look at why.
Yeah, and almost everyone got B. The issue here is we're making a read request at consistency level of local quorum. We're making it in the Paris DC, the one on the right, and node Z is acting as the coordinator. With a replication factor of 3 within that data center, and it's set for each data center, we're going to try to replicate the data on 3 nodes. So a failure of 1, in the worst case, the node W had the data we're looking for, but it would still be replicated on 2 other nodes within that data center. In the best case, the data we're looking for is not on node W, so the data would be replicated on 3 nodes in the Paris data center. Either way, local quorum requires that a quorum that is more than half of the replicas in the local data center respond, and in either the best case or worst case, there are 2 replicas that can respond. So this will succeed, and it will happen completely within the Paris data center. By the way, if it were to fail in the Paris data center, if you had more nodes down, it would simply fail. It would not cross over and try to meet the local quorum requirement in the Tokyo data center. Local keeps it to 1 data center.
Yeah, and just something to point out here, generally speaking, when you are using your consistency level, you want to just start with the local variance, right? We're not really getting into a lot of detail here, but you'll see there's this local quorum compared to quorum. There's also a local 1 compared to 1. By starting with the local variance, you're essentially protecting yourself from the future. And what do I mean by that is, let's say that you start with a single data center, right? And you're using quorum. But then what happens if you add on another data center and you're still using quorum? That kind of changes the expectations of what's going to happen across those 2 data centers. But if you use the local quorum version, then the way that it was working, where you're only ever going to be achieving quorum on the local data center, stays the same, right? That way it allows you to kind of expand and change the topology of your cluster without having to worry about what's going to happen to the underlying query. Not only that, quorum on a multi-DC standpoint actually is going to hit a different number of nodes than local quorum would. There's other factors. So what it really comes down to is, just by a standard, use the local variance. If you have a good reason not to, know why, and then you can change it. But if you use the local variance, you're going to be in a good place.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to question 12. Let's do that. All right. So consider the CQL traces. Now, something to point out in the real exam, depending on your browser settings, also on that kind of deal, you may need to scroll to see the entire trace. So don't get caught with that. Make sure that you look at the entire trace. And then at what elapsed time is the data persisted so that it will survive an unexpected node shutdown? Oh, and please don't give any answers in the chats. Just go ahead and use the Menti for that. It's okay, Masood.
Yeah.
I deleted it for you. I mean, it's a practice exam. It's okay, but yeah. All right, looks like answers are in, and the correct answer was in fact C. Looks like almost everybody got that one correct. Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite things that Cassandra does.
Very good. So this question is really about, do you understand the right path? Yeah. Not do you understand CQL traces so much. So looking at what's happening, the steps as you're walking through, parsing is first, preparing the statement, determining replications, which replicas we need to update, and then the last two steps, appending to the commit log and adding to names mem table. The whole point of the commit log is to provide a persistent on-disk representation of the data that's going to be in the mem table. So if the node fails, when the node comes back up, the mem table is transient. The mem table goes away. It's in memory.
Right. But
the commit log will be replayed, and the mem table will be rebuilt from it. So at 2193 milliseconds, we appended to the commit log, and that's the point at which the data will survive an unexpected shutdown. And great job on the answers there.
I'll answer that in a second. Okay, moving on to the next question. And we should see this pop over here. Get that going. There we go. All right, so how is replication factor configured in Cassandra? I see Taufik retracted his answer. Yes, yeah, you got it.
Did that on his own. Yep,
yeah.
Awesome.
And again, please don't put answers in the chat, or I will delete them, instantly remove them. All right, let's take a look. What is the correct answer here? Was in fact B. Yeah, the moment you ever create your first key space, you'll know this one.
Yeah, because in fact you are required to configure replication factor as part of creating a key space. So as David said, if you've ever done this, you did have to commit, or you did have to set the replication factor when you created your first key space. So again, this one was just a memorization syntax question. Per key space, B, correct answer.
Yeah, and you know, something to point out here as well, with Cassandra, this is actually a really, really powerful thing. you set your replication factor when you create the key space. Cassandra does all the replication for you. You don't need to manually file copies. There's no ETL. You could have 1,000 nodes going all across the world. The replication's being handled for you when you do this one thing, right? It's an extremely powerful capability. All right, so looking at the leaderboard at this point, we should have... We have 13 questions so far? Yeah. So the total could be up to 13,000 points. We're almost there. All right, let's go into the next section here. So now what we're going to do, so the section you saw a second ago, most of those, you noticed there were a couple for the data modeling piece, but most of those were pertaining to DS201, which is both developer and admin exams. Now we're going to move over just to a couple questions that are more focused on the admin part. And then we're going to follow up with some that get into the data modeling piece. So looking at question 14, what are two options for Internode encryption in Cassandra? Now, something I want to point out. In the real exam, if you saw something like this that says choose two, that means choose two answers. Now, Menti is limited in the way that we can do the quiz questions, so you can only pick one. If you get either one of the correct answers right, you'll get it right here, right? Just know in the real exam, if you see something that says choose two, you have to choose two answers. Okay, let's see. Looks like the answers are in. The correct answers here were both C and E. So again, in the real exam, you would have had to have answered both C and E. But again, because of the way that Menti does things, you could only pick one. All right, let's take a look at why.
Yeah, and just a note also, in the real exam, there aren't a lot of multi-answer questions, but anytime there is one, we will tell you twice how many answers there are. So what are two options? Choose two. So we don't want to make this any more difficult than it needs to be. In this case, the choices for internode encryption are all, meaning encrypt everything between all Cassandra nodes, none, no encryption between nodes, DC, which means encrypt between nodes in different data centers, and rack, which means encrypt between nodes in different racks. A rack is a subset of a data center. So rack and DC are the two choices.
Okay. By the way, real quick, a question just came up If this doesn't go fast, oh yeah. How many questions are in the exam? When you actually get to the metal interface that you see here, when you've logged in, it'll tell you exactly how many questions, how much time, and such. So you should be able to see that. It is 60 questions, by the way. All right, so moving on to question 15. All right, so which configuration file is used to set garbage collection properties for Cassandra? Okay, it looks like the answers are in. Let's take a look. And the correct answer here was B. Let's see why.
All right, so in this one, yeah, correct answer is B. I see we had some people who chose a few others. Cassandra YAML wouldn't have been a bad guess because a lot of the configuration for Cassandra goes in Cassandra YAML. But JVM options is a separate file pulled out to segregate all the JVM related options like memory sizing and so on, and garbage collection. So JVM options is the correct answer in this one.
Okay, all right, moving on to question 16 for those who are following along in the GitHub repository. And that should start up. Okay, so consider the table definition and how a single row is stored in one mem table and two SS tables on a Cassandra node. What are the current values for this row? This is another one of those key ones that really helps you understand, you know, at the core how Cassandra works, right? When you understand this, you're gonna be in a very good place. All right, look at the answers. So the correct answer here was B. And I saw a couple, one for C as well. But again, once you see this one, you'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes down to timestamp. In Cassandra, the latest version of data wins. So we look at this, it's a single row, and we have test and score with a primary key of ID. Well, the ID is the same in the mem table and the two SS tables because we're talking about the same row. The score is in the mem table is 75, and with a timestamp starting in 139. Normally the mem table is the most recent timestamp, so I'm going to take a shot at 75 being the score. And if I look at the score in the other two SS tables, the timestamps are lower, so they're older. So 75 is the score. What's the test? Well, again, I'm going to look at the latest timestamp. It doesn't appear in the mem table, so I'm going to look at the two SS tables. And in the SS table, the most recent timestamp is 120. So the value of test is math. So it should be 1175 in math, and that is B. B is the correct answer. One other thing to point out about this from an exam point of view, there are some questions where you have to look at timestamps. In the exam, we've tried to make it very clear in the first few digits that the timestamps are different. So we haven't thrown timestamps at you that differ in the
not trying to
seventh
be
digit
tricky
or
whatever.
digit.
Yeah.
Right. They differ in the first three digits. So you can say 139, 120, 118. Pretty clear what the ordering is there.
That's right. Alrighty. So moving on, you'll notice here, take a look at the leaderboard. Again, look at your phones. So at this point, we should, if you've gotten everything right, you'll have 16,000 points. We're there in the last stretch. So again, look at your phones just to see where you're at. And then we're going to finish up this last piece here. I think, and just so you know, I think we're going to go just a couple minutes over, but it shouldn't be too bad, so stick with us. All right, so question 17. What is a valid statement about a coordinator node handling a query at consistency level 3? And please don't answer in the chat. Okay, looks like our answers are in. Let's take a look. The correct answer here was D, but I see a good amount of folks did answer A and B. Let's take a look at why.
Yeah, so if we take a look at this, keep in mind, fundamentally, Cassandra is designed for performance at scale.
Yep.
So the consistency level of 3 means that the coordinator node needs to contact 3 nodes. It could send a direct read request to all replicas, but if we're requesting a large amount of data, it's got to wait now for all 3 nodes to return that large amount of data. It could select, so A and B requesting all the data from either all replicas or 3 replicas kind of involves waiting and potentially long waits for large amounts of data. So right away, I'd say those are unlikely. The read repair request is kind of in there as a distractor. The correct answer is D. What happens is the coordinator node sends a direct read request, that is to get the data from one node, and it chooses the node that in the past has responded the most quickly, because again, performance at scale. And then it sends a digest request to 2 other replicas. The digest request returns just a digest of the data. The coordinator node then compares the real data that it received from one node and creates a digest of it, compares it with the digests it received from the others, like a checksum. It's very small. And if they all match, the coordinator request sends the data back. If they don't match, the coordinator node looks at the timestamps and figures out whether the data it received or the digests, which one's most current. If the data is most current, it returns the data. And by the way, it tells the other ones they need to update, does its read repair. If the digests are more current, it then has to request from the most current digest, request the real data. But performance at speed guides so many of the design decisions in Cassandra, and D here is the correct answer.
That's right. All right, moving on to question 18. Almost there. What is a valid statement about a write made at consistency level local quorum against the key space with a replication factor of 3? All right, let's see. The results are in. And the correct answer was, in fact, C. That's right.
All right, so we're talking about a write made at consistency level local quorum. Key space is has a replication factor of 3. Local quorum is quorum, and as David said earlier, we're going to prefer to use the local variants of those, even if we have a single data center. But quorum or local quorum of 3 is a majority. A majority of 3 is 2. That is more than half. So the coordinator node will send the writes to 2 nodes. I'm sorry. It's always going to send the writes. I'm reading one thing and saying another. It's always going to send the writes to every node.
Yeah.
But as soon as the quorum of nodes, that is 2 out of 3, respond, then it says good and sends an ACK back to the request store.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if you were going to finish that statement.
It's like, oops.
Yeah, the replication factor is the key here, right? The number of writes will always be to what your replication factor is. So regardless of what the consistency level is, if your replication factor is 3, it's going to be 3 nodes.
Yep.
All right.
But once it gets to the consistency level, gets that many ACKs back, then it responds.
Yes.
But always writes the number of the replication factor.
All right. So for the leaderboard, at this point, we've had 18 questions, right? So if you've gotten them all right, you'd have 18,000 points. We have 2 more questions left. Let's do it. These are going to be some of the data modeling practice ones. These are going to be a little different from what you've seen so far. But again, good always to know what to expect with this stuff. So let's go ahead and start that one up. So again, question 18. So consider the Jabako diagram here that captures the physical data model for investment portfolio data. What is the primary key and clustering order of the table trades by ASD? And by the way, if you've never seen a Jabako diagram before and you're freaking out, don't worry, you're going to learn all about it in DS220. All right, looks like our answers are in. The correct answer here being D. I see a little bit of a spread. Let's take a look at why.
Yeah, so in the Jabako diagram, this is a physical data model. So the data types and the ordering of the clustering columns are defined. And if you look, the K stands for the primary key, the partition key, and C are the clustering columns. So in the trades by ASD table, the 3 columns that make up the primary key are account, symbol, and trade ID in that order. So that rules out A and B because trade ID and symbol are reversed. Next, we have C and D as possible choices. And you notice the ordering. The symbol column is in ascending order. By the way, ascending is the default, and trade ID is in descending. So if we look at choices C and D, they both have trade ID in descending. So that doesn't rule either of them out. What makes D the correct answer goes back to the same rule we talked about in one of the very early questions. That is, if you constrain clustering columns, you have to start at the first one. That's true when you define the order explicitly as well. if you define the order of any clustering columns explicitly, you have to define them starting at the first one. So while C looks kind of correct, because we're specifying the order of descending, and you could say, well, symbol is ascending, that's the default, so I only have to do that. That would be wrong, because you have to define starting from the first clustering column if you define the order at all. So the last one, we start by specifying the order of the first clustering column symbol, and the second clustering column trade ID, ascending and then descending. D is the correct answer.
You know, and just something to point out, a question came up, you know, saying, you know, the amount of time it takes to understand the diagram. In the real exam, you're not going to be gated to like 2 minutes per question. So,
right.
And trying to understand a diagram like this, you're not going to have that time constraint. You'll be able to, you know, get the think time to look at it and really understand what's going on. Again, if you've not seen one of these before, you will definitely go through this in DS220. So don't, if you're like, whoa, what was that? Right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
And so, Rob, the question about why A is incorrect, it's because in the Chebotko diagram, the three columns that make up the primary key are in order: account, symbol, and trade ID. A has account, trade ID, and symbol. So order matters very much in clustering columns.
That's right. That's right. Okay, and actually I see Sanjay asked, will there be data modeling questions in the real exam for administrator? I believe the data modeling questions should only be in the dev exam, because that includes DS201 and 220, correct?
That is correct, only for developers.
Okay. All right, everybody, last question, question 20. And here we go. Boop. All right, so consider the application workflow diagram for an investment portfolio application, and which access patterns are evaluated before an application can evaluate Q3.2. All right, and the answers are in. Let's see, this I expected a spread here. The correct answer is A. This is another one of those that once you understand the logic behind it, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get this now.
Yeah, so in this one, we're really looking at how the application workflow diagram works, and it's a crucial part of data modeling in Cassandra. The entry point for for these access patterns is Q1. So Q1 has to be done before anything else. And after Q1, looking at the Chivako diagram, you can go directly to Q2 or Q3. You don't have to go Q1, Q2, Q3. It could be Q1, Q1, Q2, or Q1, Q3. But Q3 is actually not a thing, if you will. Q3 is made up of several things at the same level. Q3.1, Q3.2, 3.3, 3.4. So the only prerequisite for, and let's see, the question was for 3.2, the only prerequisite is Q1, making A the correct answer.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so with that, if we take our look at the leaderboard, look at your phones, right? So at this point, if you got them all right, you have 20,000 points. Wonderful. Now, to have a passing 70% grade, you need 14,000, right? You need 14 correct. So again, it's more of just the gut check to give you a feel for how you're doing. And for anybody, though, we really encourage you, go through those learning paths no matter what you do. Ensure you can take the quizzes, ensure you're comfortable with all that. Yeah. Okay, so just to wrap up, we do have a quick survey, free form. So good feedback, bad feedback, constructive, not constructive, something terrible, whatever. No, but no, please, we do take your feedback seriously. So if there's anything else, if there's something you'd like us to improve or change or whatever, or if you liked it, feel free to put it here. And like I said, it is something that we will... More questions. Oh, wow. Just... You want to go for a 6-hour session,
There you go.
Now, and to this, by the way, if you think about it, the real exam is 60 questions. So this actually is about a third of what you could expect. And we picked these in particular to give you an idea of all the different types of flavors of questions that you might get, right? So wow, a couple more. Wow, even more questions. More around architecture. Yeah.
Architecture.
Yeah, I could see that. Funny enough, to that point, we actually focused more in on the DS201 stuff because it's the one area that is shared by both the admin and the dev exams. But so we could add more in there, definitely. Now, funny enough, so for the advanced data modeling sessions, we actually do have some other workshops. I'll show those to you here real quick. So if you go back to our organization, DataStax Academy in GitHub, you notice we actually have a whole set of other workshops. In particular, there's one, where is it? Where is our advanced data modeling one, guys? Why am I not seeing it? Am I just passing it over here? Hey, Cedric or Jack or someone, could one of you guys drop the advanced data modeling workshop link? I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. Unless it's for some reason in somebody else's org when it should be here. So anyway, to that point, to the question about the comment here about the advanced data modeling piece, we do have that, right? We do have some advanced data modeling sessions. There, thank you, Cedric. Did I just miss it? Oh, it's in the, that's why I see it's in DataStax Devs, not DataStax Academy, my bad. So there you go. So for the person who mentioned that, if you go to the link that Cedric just dropped, I'll go ahead and drop it here as well. That will give you some more of the advanced data modeling questions. Okay. Yeah. Maybe in future sessions, it sounds like we can make some modifications there. And the Menti questions different from GitHub. Now that's interesting. Did we? They should be the same. We'll have to
they should be the same.
Well, yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. Thanks for pointing it out. All right, so with that, just to wrap up here before we close out today. So again, don't forget to go to datastax.com/dev. What's actually really cool, separate from Academy, is if you go through dev and you start kind of picking the areas that you're interested in, there are Katacoda scenarios that are embedded right there in the site. If you're not familiar with Katacoda, it is a really awesome online cloud-based learning platform from O'Reilly. It's also free. All the stuff we have there is free. So if you click on those, you'll actually it'll spin up Cassandra for you in the cloud, and you can start doing all sorts of stuff with it right there in the browser. So we do provide some links. Matter of fact, that Cassandra data modeling one, that is one of the links there that you can go through some use cases in data modeling if you're interested. So it's really something cool to take a look at. And as always, if you have any other questions after today, hit us up on Discord, hit us up on the community, right? You can always hit us up directly if you need to, if you've got any follow-up or anything. Yeah, we're here. We're here for you. And with that, thank you all so much. And take care.
Yeah,
we really appreciate you being with us today. And good luck on your exams. When you pass your exam and get your certification, shout about it. Go on LinkedIn, throw out your badges. Definitely link us, let us know, call us out, mention us. And then that way we can kind of help promote you and your certification exam win as well. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.